Hi, I'm Cliff Robertson, and I'm happy to be here to introduce you to the first in a series of documentaries about the fighter pilots of World War II. The men featured in this program all earned the title of ace during the war by shooting down 5 or more planes. Now that statistic by itself isn't terribly meaningful until you hear these men describe what it was like to engage in a dogfight. And to say that the odds were against them would be a gross understatement. The average life of a pilot at the front was a mere 48 hours. And for every flyer who earned the title of ace, thousands died. Why did some men survive and go on to become aces? Well, there was a little bit of luck involved, I suppose, and a high degree of skill, but there was something else as well. The best pilots weren't simply courageous. They craved the excitement of it all. Indeed, as I listen to these pilots recall their experiences, I'm reminded of a remark made by Robert E. Lee during the Battle of Fredericksburg. No, I wasn't there. He said, "It is well that war is so terrible, or we should grow too fond of it." These aces had plenty of first-hand experiences with the terrible side of war. They saw friends go down in flames, and many of them barely escaped death themselves. Still, as one pilot observed in an interview for this program, it was not uncommon for aces to seek danger. A day without it, he said, was somehow unsatisfying.
An ace, the highest card in the deck. Of tens of thousands of fighter pilots who fought in World War II, only a select few shot down 5 or more planes to earn the title of ace.
Are you all right? You get any of the bladders?
Yes, I got a Messerschmitt 109 and a Dornier.
Who were these men? What made them a breed apart? In the high arenas of a world at war, what separated the hunters from the hunted?
A fighter pilot fights by himself. He's a lone fighter. He has to have a will to attack. He must really hunger after wanting to down planes.
So I banked as tight as I could and turned around and faced this Focke-Wulf. And I could see the gun sparking, and then it hit me. That man is trying to kill me.
It's like a duel. Well, a duel which ends like any duel, with death for some and victories for others.
When my bullets hit an enemy and an enemy's plane caught fire, I felt excitement and joy.
The thrill of the chase and what you're doing, there is no substitute.
World War II. Hitler's armies sweep across Europe. In the Far East, Japanese forces swarm over to dominate Asia. On both fronts, lightning victories are air attacks. To the Allied powers that heat of the sky wield falls to a few. Adolf Luftwaffe, 104 killed by an eye injury during memorizes the eye chart formed Luftwaffe. All fighter pilot, highly the German army.
pilot in the opponents at the have to continue his. He was physically. He was wounded.
1,000 swordsmen for the German fighter pilot. But young of war accept their duty instead that in the Luftwaffe, the most earth, lay victory. Broadhurst, Royal Air Force. He will become Vice Marshal and later Umpire.
This is part of the game, I suppose. I mean, I had fast motorbikes. When I was crashing aeroplanes, I was crashing motorbikes. It's all part of the game.
Young Englishmen eager for adventure volunteer in droves for the Royal Air Force. Their country will soon call upon them to provide the last line of defense in an all-out struggle for survival. Ivan Lakiev, Red Air Force, 12 kills. Told he is too short and awkward to qualify for flight school, 16-year-old Lakiev nearly abandons his dreams of becoming a fighter pilot. But by war's end, this flight school reject will become a leading fighter ace and a decorated hero of the Soviet Union.
In our country, every Russian, every Soviet knows the slogan, "He who comes here with a sword will die by the sword." Where did we find the strength? In love for our motherland.
For the pilots of the Red Air Force, World War II opens with terrifying suddenness. With a deep love of the motherland and a centuries-old hatred of their German neighbors, Russians will stop at nothing to destroy the invaders. Saburo Sakai, Imperial Japanese Naval Air Force, 64 kills. Sakai nearly dies of severe head wounds early in the war when American bullets rip into his cockpit, but he recovers to become one of Japan's top fighter aces.
No matter how many of the enemy's planes I shot down, my personal power was very limited. To my unit men, my colleagues, teaching how to shoot down a plane, how many aces I could create, was the thing I devoted my time to more than how many planes I personally shot down.
Driven by a fanatical devotion to duty, ordained by the ancient code of Bushido, Japanese pilots take the spirit of the samurai into the skies. Francis Gabby Gabreski, United States Army Air Corps, 28+ kills. Gabreski will become one of America's top aces, but was almost washed out of flight school because he had so much trouble learning how to handle an airplane.
You've got to have the right attitude. You've got to have the right training. You've got to be aggressive. You've got to be professional in every sense of the word.
Stunned by the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, outraged Americans rush into uniform, seeking vengeance.
We're there to win. We're there to destroy.
Survival was an art. Making kills was a craft. Instincts took over when it was time to decide between the quick and the dead. What made some men masters of aerial combat, while others fought only to survive? What did it take to become an ace?
To complete your mission as a fighter pilot, you have to disregard your own safety. It is amazing, but one can grow used to accepting that risk. I've noticed myself a phenomenon. That danger acts like a drug. You need it, you actually seek it out. And a day without danger seemed unsatisfying.
Arseny Vorozhikin, Red Air Force, 46+ kills. While leading a handful of fighters deep inside enemy territory, he spots an armada of German bombers and fighters. Retreat is not in Vorozhikin's dictionary.
Они летели как-то тихо, на малой скорости.
We went around from the back. The sun was shining from the side of the enemy. We made the turn. They didn't see us. Now the sun was shining behind us also. I gave the order to attack the enemy fighters all at once. 2 of them went down in flames right away. 3 of them somersaulted around in the air after they were hit. The other fighters who didn't expect this, all of them dove down, and they left the bombers without protection, without cover.
Cocky, self-assured, the fighter ace thinks only of victory. Defeat is for the enemy.
Each pilot had an absolute confidence in himself. All pilots had the pride that they would never lose a fight, one samurai against another samurai. This kind of spirit was found in all of the pilots.
Most of the young people like myself had utter confidence. I never, ever dreamed that I would get a hole in my airplane because I was so good at what I did.
Air combat is quick. A minute, maybe less, decides who goes down in the record books and who in flames.
A fighter pilot, the very best of them, are unusually quick. I mean, quick in reflexes, quick in their analysis.
And once he makes up his mind, that's it. He doesn't change it.
Flying demands a certain kind of intelligence, some self-control, being able to react quickly, having your wits about you. If you couldn't outfight him, at least outwit him.
Exploiting the enemy's weakness, taking advantage of altitude, the sun, and the clouds to achieve surprise are indispensable tactics of the fighter ace.
Jawohl, dieser Ausspruch mit dem Kopf und nicht mit den Muskeln.
Should I come out of the sun? Should I dive? Attack from below? I have to make all these considerations before I attack, instead of simply jumping on him, in the hopes of somehow bringing him down.
I thought as I went into that cloud, I thought, now, that guy cannot chase me into this cloud. He can't come in the cloud after me because he can't see me. So he's got to turn around. And I'll turn around and get a quick one at him as he goes away. And I did, turned around and in the cloud, and came out of the cloud, and sure enough, there he was in front of me, and I let him have a whole bunch of it. Clouds they can be beneficial to you, but they are also dangerous.
I would attack only if I had 2,000 meters of clearance above them. Then I would come down with great speed and shoot them down. I would always tell my colleagues that when your windshield was filled with the enemy aircraft, that was the time to pull the trigger and to shoot.
Your adrenaline is flowing and your mind is racing thousands of miles a second. Your guns are fixed. They're not capable of swinging around. You have to swing your whole aircraft around in order to get your sights on it. And now he sees you, and so he breaks, what we call, he breaks into you, because then that's going to put him in a position of trying to get on your tail. It's a heck of a situation to be in. But there's nothing greater than a combat with another aircraft. There's nothing. That's the epitome. There's nothing else. There's nothing can touch it.
Fame and adulation grow with each mounting score. Aces become household names, men to admire, to cheer, to emulate.
Don, I want to interview you on behalf of all the girls in America. Are you married?
No, I'm not. Still single.
Good.
Fighter pilots often lived little better than the foot-slogging infantry. They lived in seas of mud. They baked under the heat of African skies and courted frostbite in the most bitter of winter conditions. While flying over limitless stretches of empty ocean, a faulty compass or engine could mean an unmarked grave 1,000 feet underwater.
Kennt der Jagdflieger keine Angst?
Does the fighter pilot know no fear? I would say yes, that he does know fear. It's a tremendous fear. And every attack on a four-engine group requires an overcoming of fear. Because without knowing fear, I cannot be brave.
Я начинал войну на Халкиндоле, имея...
I started the war without fear. I was like a child who doesn't know what fear is and rushes into battle. Returning from one outing, I landed and saw that the plane was all shot up. And I thought, well, it's dangerous to be so fearless.
You hear guys say, oh, God, I was scared, and I froze or something like that. That didn't happen to me. I just said, no way that this mother's going to shoot me down.
Despite their unshakable confidence and bravado, death was a companion that flew every mission. Pilots died inside cramped cockpits that reeked of fuel and cordite from the guns. They died in action, and they died in accidents. And they died alone.
To lose a good friend killed flying with you is always a shock. But the human mind has this wonderful capacity for blanking out the things that it doesn't want to remember.
You can't measure in terms of money the value of human lives. That's impossible. And there were enormous losses, both in people and in resources. I can tell you that when we fought, we didn't think about the fact that in an hour or in a few minutes we might be killed. We just fought.
Chaps who were killed, you couldn't brood on it, that of course you all carried on. Otherwise it would have, the whole thing would have collapsed. Morale would have gone to the dogs.
Auf die Heimatstadt meiner Frau in Magdeburg.
The worst experience I had was when my friend Lent, a well-known night fighter pilot, out of foolishness crashed while landing, and he and the rest of the crew, who had been critically injured, died on the operating table. That was very hard for me, that my best friend died due to a rather trivial mistake, basically.
You know, friendships forged in combat are never forgotten. I'll tell you that. Better than brotherly love.
And so now
George Chandler learns a bitter lesson at the hands of an aggressive Japanese pilot.
Someplace, and I unbutton my oxygen mask and light up that first cigarette, and I've been all those hours without it. And I'm feeling pretty pleased, and by now we're within the radar control, the fighter control of our base, and the mission is over for the day. And we're relaxing. And old George let himself relax. And a flight leader or squadron leader should never do that. And smart aleck-like, I took the oxygen mask and pulled it back up over my face, and the microphone, the nose mic is in there, and I said, now where's that goddamned all-silver zero? Run him down here and I'll show him how the world's truly made, or some smart aleck remark like that. And now we're out of the gun sights, the gun switches are off. Way back there we've dropped tanks, and we got enough fuel to get home. And everything is going just right, but everything's shut down. And one of my guys says, there's a bogey at 12 o'clock high, and here he comes. Jesus, I'm trying to get this thing out of automatic lean mixture and get the props back up, get the throttles back up, get the gun switches on, get the gun sight on, get this big machine that is just a cruising airplane to being a fighting airplane all over again. And I'm too slow. And I didn't get to that zero in time. And And he went right through that bomber formation, and the lead bomber was lost, and the whole crew was lost. And I'm the guy. And it's still. If I had stayed right up on the combat edge, clear up to the landing pattern, or when we let go of those bombers, and we weren't 25 miles from letting go of them for the day. And I didn't do it. We lost a bomber.
Battle remembrances, personal triumphs and tragedies. For George Chandler and others, thoughts that will haunt them forever. Elliot White Springs, an American ace of World War I, wrote a description of aerial combat that has become a classic. The heavens were the grandstands, and only the gods were spectators. The stake was the world. The forfeit was the player's place at the table, and the game had no recess. It was the most dangerous of all sports, and the most fascinating. It got in the blood like wine. It aged men 40 years in 40 days. It ruined nervous systems in an hour. It was a fast game. The average life of a pilot at the front was 48 hours, and to many, it seemed an age.
Hi, I'm Cliff Robertson, and I'm delighted to be here to introduce you to this extraordinary documentary about the Battle of Britain, one of the most significant military conflicts in history. The story begins in June of 1940. The Germans had already seized much of Western Europe, including France. Now, Hitler wanted Great Britain as well, but he realized that a ground invasion of England could not be launched until the Royal Air Force had been subdued, and so he ordered the Luftwaffe into action. The Nazi Air Force appeared to be invincible. With some 3,000 planes, it was more than 4 times the size of the RAF, and its pilots were more experienced. But British military and civilian leaders knew they could not back down. The fate of Western Europe lay in the balance.
April 1940. The conquest of Europe has begun. Hitler's armies storm through Holland, Belgium, Denmark, Norway, and France. Remnants of British and French battalions trapped on the beach at Dunkirk are pounded by the Luftwaffe and blasted by German artillery. France surrenders. Hitler dances a victory jig. Only one obstacle stands in the way of his conquest of England.
The Battle of Britain is about to begin. Let us therefore brace ourselves to our duty. So bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour.
General Adolf Galland, Luftwaffe, veteran of combat in Spain and over Europe, advisor to and sometimes nemesis of Luftwaffe Chief Hermann Göring. He will eventually tally 104 kills.
Hitler himself didn't want the conflict with Britain. Quite definitely not. I heard him say so personally. He said that, I hate to have to wage this war against England. The English people are so much like us. It's unfortunate that I'm forced to do this.
We were in a situation where everybody could see, certainly the fighting men could see, but everybody else could now see that this country was in the gravest danger that it had been in since the Norman invasion in 1066.
The Luftwaffe seems invincible. Göring arrogantly assures Hitler that Britain will beg for peace in a matter of weeks or be destroyed from the air.
We as pilots were entirely convinced at the time that we could defeat the Royal Air Force.
Hitler plans Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of England. German troops and armor gather on the French coast, ready to cross the Channel once the Luftwaffe drives the outnumbered RAF from the sky. Only 700 RAF planes stand against the Luftwaffe's 3,000. British pilots are largely untested, young men barely out of their teens. Johannes Mackie Steinhoff, Luftwaffe. A brilliant leader, he'll survive 5 crashes and nearly die in the flames of one of the first jet fighters. Steinhoff will score 176 kills.
The Battle of Britain differed from other battles, from other campaigns of World War II, in that it was basically a struggle between 2 air forces. No ground troops were involved. The Navy was not involved.
The German strategy: lure fighter command into combat and destroy it. British codebreakers have cracked the German secret code. The encoded messages, known as Ultra, warn Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding of the German strategy to deliver a death blow to the RAF. In response, he shrewdly commits his Spitfires and Hurricanes with care.
We realized very quickly, due to the quick reactions of the Royal Air Force, that they knew when to engage and when to turn back. We always tried to lure them away from England, and they simply never came. Or when they did engage, then they showed that they were really exceptional pilots in those groups. Really very exceptional.
Dowding stubbornly fights the politicians to build a modern fighter force. Among his demands are concrete runways and bulletproof windscreens for his pilots. He calls his pilots "my chicks," and his chicks are ready to die for him.
He never swerved from his determination to do it. He wouldn't be put off. He wouldn't be distracted. He was a very stubborn old boy. Not for nothing was he called Stuffy. But he conceived it, he had a system, and he didn't deviate from it for a moment, and it worked.
Oh, the spirit in the fighter squadron of those days was remarkably high. Of course, we were obviously the best squadron in the Royal Air Force, and the Royal Air Force itself was beyond peer, obviously.
Wing Commander James E. Johnny Johnson, Royal Air Force. He will become the leading British ace with 38 kills.
Any claims, Johnny?
109 destroyed, Freddie, yes.
Oh, good show.
Men gave a little more than they normally did because of this factor of high morale and the leadership, and I think that it was one of the greatest and most significant factor in the Battle of Britain.
We've been holding the front here. Out of the front carriage, so there's nothing to worry about. Okay. Okay, boy.
So we had no worries, and not overconfident, but supremely confident, I think, in our abilities. Slightly startled by the numbers when they appeared. On the other hand, one could then say, well, we outnumbered them 1 to 15 or something, and, which produced a laugh now and again.
Dowding's chicks peck at the Luftwaffe, taking their toll. 20 British fighters take on 100 of the enemy. Goering is frustrated, furious. He orders increased attacks on fighter command bases and radar stations. Before the invasion can be launched, the Luftwaffe must control the skies. Time is critical. Autumn storms will soon rage over the channel, making an invasion impossible. The pilots of Fighter Command will not quit.
Bless them more, bless them more, the long and the short and the tall. Bless all the sergeants and WO1s, bless all the corporals and their thinking sons, 'cause we're saying goodbye to them all. As back to their billets they crawl. You'll get no promotion this side of the ocean, so cheer up, my lads, bless them all.
Bless them all, bless them all.
Feeling the pressure of Hitler's mounting rage, Goering plans a knockout blow. August 13th, 1940, Aldertag, Eagle Day. The Luftwaffe attacks in full fury. British radar pinpoints the assault, and the Royal Observer Corps alerts Fighter Command. Dowding's early warning system works. Spitfires and Hurricane fighters are dispatched with speed and accuracy. Wing Commander Desmond Sheen. He will tally 7+ kills. He is among the first to intercept the German onslaughts of Aldertag, Eagle Day.
We were sent off, a squadron, there were 11 of us, to intercept a formation of 100+ coming from Norway. I attacked one which blew up, and it had I thought it was a bomb underneath, but in fact it was a fuel tank, and it just disintegrated. I attacked another one which I think went down in flames. That was one of the worst defeats.
Suddenly we saw them, this mass of ants with wings coming towards us. Our leader took us just above the Meshmet 110, who, strangely enough, formed themselves into a defensive ring. I dived into it, and I remember distinctly closing my eyes, firing my guns, and diving through the middle of it, and coming out the other side. And it was all just a mess of German iron crosses and not knowing what you were doing. But that was my first combat. I remember it well.
Goering orders his fighter pilots to stay glued to the Luftwaffe bombers. It is a critical tactical error.
These escort missions were very unpopular because we had to fly at the same altitude and speed as the bomber formations, which meant that we could not utilize the tactical superiority of our fighter aircraft. The speed, the climbing capability, and the maneuverability And as a result, we suffered great losses at the hands of the English.
Yeah, we took a lot of advantage of the way the German escorts were tied to the bomber formation, which did pin them down quite a bit.
On Eagle Day, Fighter Command's losses are half that of the Luftwaffe. But damage to airdromes and radar stations leave England on the edge of defeat. A miracle is needed. It arrives in the form of a mixed blessing. On the night of August 24th, a German navigator miscalculates and bombs rain down on a residential section of London. In reprisal, Churchill orders the RAF to bomb Berlin. Humiliated, Hitler orders a shift in strategy. The Luftwaffe will concentrate its attacks on London. It is a fateful decision. London is devastated, and thousands of civilians die. Fortunately, the RAF gains time to rebuild. The Battle of Britain will reach a fiery crescendo. Ultra codebreakers reveal to Fighter Command that the Luftwaffe plans another decisive battle on September 15, 1940. Dowding realizes that now is the time to commit his entire fighter force of 600 planes. Spitfires and Hurricanes rise like hornets to meet the invaders.
Eine ganze Perlenschnur von Spitfires.
I sighted a long string of Spitfires, the so-called Snake. I attacked what I thought was the last plane in the string and had good position behind him. But he wasn't the last one. He was the second to last.
And a lot of 109s came round, and I remember sitting there and saying how pretty these are, these little aeroplanes with blue underneath and black crosses. And then all of a sudden my aircraft shuddered and there were holes in both wings, and unknown to me there were holes in the fuselage as well. But the chap that was shooting at me overshot. The next moment there's a 109 sitting in front of me. And you know, if you like, in a very frightened and angry thing, I just pressed the firing button and wasted an awful lot of ammunition of 30-odd seconds. And the next moment there was a woof and down he went near Maidstone.
Without question, our most, or at least for myself, my most serious threat was from the English pilots, especially those pilots who flew the Spitfire and the Hurricane.
As the battle progresses, it is clear that Goering's hopes of achieving air supremacy are shattered.
Ich unterschreibe das 100%, weil
the mastery of the sky was lost by the Germans at that point. There was no strategic concept. There was only a tactical concept. There were no fighters with a great range. They were planned to defend the Reich, to defend the cities. There were no refueling tanks. And in addition to that, we had this amateurish leadership. Well, they should have known from the very beginning that this was something that they could not win.
Refusing to accept the initial setbacks, Goering orders a second attack. Dowding's miserly policy of conserving planes and pilots, coupled with the tactical advantages of fighting over their own territory, give his young chicks the decisive edge.
Well, I think the Battle of Britain was the safest battle for a fighter pilot possible. We had good radar control, good aircraft. We flew from nice warm bases. The average trip lasted, say, 50 minutes.
A sergeant pilot being picked up out of the drink in the nick of time. It happens every week. Shot down, nearly drowned. But if you think he's finished, you're as crazy as Hitler.
In the Battle of Britain, of course, we were fighting over our own territory. We were flying sometimes 4 or 5 sorties a day. And, we were pretty tired.
Dass unsere Jagdflieger 1000 Einsätze und mehr geflogen.
Our fighter pilots flew 1,000 sorties each. When you look at the English, they flew 80 or 100 sorties, and then they were pulled out and used in their home base. We could not afford to do this. The German fighter pilot would have to continue his mission for as long as he was physically capable, until he was wounded.
After the battle, Goering rails at his combat-weary fighter pilots, accusing them of cowardice.
The German fighter pilots came to the Channel coast triumphant, victorious, after their rapid successes in Europe. And by Goering's orders and Counter's orders, and coming down to the Channel coast and threatening them to have them shot and so on, and telling them to do this, he destroyed their morale.
On the next day, the second Luftwaffe assault is beaten back. This will be the last major daytime raid over England. 2 days later, Hitler abandons Operation Sea Lion.
And this is one thing that I think is extraordinary the Germans didn't pick on. They put all their effort into escorting bombers over to attack London and the military bases and the naval bases, whereas if they'd taken a good proportion of their fighter arm to attack our forward airfields and destroy our fighters on the ground, the outcome of the battle might have been a lot different.
The, I think, vital factor in the battle, apart from fighter pilot against fighter pilot, was radar, without doubt. Because as we took off, we would get our instructions from the ground control. He would give us a direction or vector to fly, and the approximate altitude, which is usually fairly accurate, and also a fairly accurate figure of how many aircraft were approaching.
The toll of the Battle of Britain is enormous in aircraft and lives. The Germans lose 1,700 planes, the RAF 900. Each side sacrifices more than 1,000 pilots.
If you ask, what were the mistakes that caused the loss of the Battle of Britain, you have to cast a wider net and ask yourself, was the Luftwaffe suited or built for and armed for such a purpose? Were the airplanes suited? Were the tactics suited? And then you come up against all sorts of hurdles, and you realize that the Luftwaffe was never meant to fight Britain.
The Battle of Britain is fought against seemingly insurmountable odds. Many factors, tactical and technical, shape the outcome. But in the final analysis, the victory belongs to the brave young pilots of the Royal Air Force. Wounded, bleeding, but still proud, Britain celebrates her survival. The sun has not yet set on the British Empire.
There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover. Tomorrow, just you wait and see.
Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few.
Love and laughter and peace when the world is free.